You gonna feel guilty or you gonna feel shame. So you can feel guilty by saying no, or you're gonna be ashamed because you let yourself be compromised. So
Over and over again.
it's like
Over and over
pick your
again.
poison. Pick your poison. At least with the guilt, like you said, you can release it. You can let that guilt go. And ultimately, you
Yes,
will learn to be proud of yourself and feel good about yourself because you stood up for
exactly.
yourself. You put yourself
Exactly.
first. Hey, hey, Capeless girls. Welcome to another episode of the Capeless Collective. It is me, again, your host, Kim, and I am here today with Jada Burrell. And Jada is going to talk to us about something that we all need to hear about. She's going to talk to us about the art of saying no, the ultimate act of self-love and self-care, and that's setting boundaries. So we're going to have some conversation today about how to say no, how to set boundaries and stick to them, and really why they're so important. So if that's something that applies to you, stick around, enjoy this conversation with us because it's going to be good and you're going to learn something and I'm going to learn something too. So without further ado, we have with us today Jada Burrell. And Jada, welcome.
Thank you so much, Kim, for having me. And thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this experience with you.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're about to pour into us. I'm so excited for the information that we're about to receive. So before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? So Jada is a life coach, y'all. So she is coming to us from the coaching perspective. But other than that, or in addition to that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So let me tell you, I am a mother of 5, and I'm a wife. I'm a grandmother. I'm a sister. I'm also a child of my parents. And the biggest thing, I'm an auntie to several. So my background of being able to help people and coach people come number one from my village and then also from friends and associates and coworkers. And so my community has helped me in this journey of becoming a coach. In addition to that, the personal journey of being able to help those who are closer to me, it just means so much to me. And so I'm able to pour that experience out to those that I don't know and those strangers. And so it has helped me to become very in tune with being able to say no, being able to set boundaries, and being able to embrace self-care and protect my peace.
Good, good. All right. So let's dig into it. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Why do you think boundaries are so important for women, especially those with a lot of responsibilities? So why are boundaries important, basically?
Do you know, Kim, the biggest thing is boundaries. It's there for protection for you and the other person. They're there for balance. And in addition to that, they're there for peace. And so not a lot of people understand. And even for me, I had to understand that boundaries was my responsibility. And I know that sounds crazy because you automatically assume, okay, everybody know that you have to put boundaries up, but it's not as easy as it may seem. It's your responsibility because you assume people understand being polite, being respectful, being courteous, being appropriate. And while they may understand the meaning of all that, there's levels to this thing, right? There's levels of being polite. And it is your responsibility to determine what level is acceptable for you. So you have to be able to communicate, understand it in yourself, but you also have to be able to communicate that, right? So with that being said, so let's take polite, for example. Some people are raised, and I know you and I from the South, raised to say that yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes or no, or or what. However, you have to decide which level of polite you will accept. And that's where you're able to set that boundary. I know that's a very easy example, but it literally is as simple as that. You have to determine what level of that area is acceptable for you. And when you decide, like, you know what, you can just say yes or no, then it's your responsibility to communicate that. You can be assertive with it if need to be, or you can be calm and polite. You don't have to be aggressive, but communicating that is important.
Agree. I like a very simple definition of a boundary. Boundaries are simply how you choose to engage with people, how
Mm-hmm.
you choose to allow people to engage with you. Those are
Absolutely.
boundaries. So,
Absolutely.
it could be something as simple as, like you said, how you allow people to address you or how you allow people to speak to you. That's a boundary. Or it could be something as complex as you having to set boundaries with maybe a sibling because they are asking you to maybe babysit your nieces and nephews and you're not be able to pour into
Mm-hmm.
yourself or do the things that you need to do for yourself because instead of enforcing your boundary of honoring yourself, you're letting somebody cross a boundary
Mm-hmm.
and create discomfort for you.
Absolutely.
And so again, it's all about how you choose, how you decide that you're going to allow people to engage with you and how you're going to engage with them. That's for me like a very simple definition of boundaries.
Absolutely. And
And like you
again,
said, it
like I said,
can look
it's
different.
important. Yeah, you have to communicate that. You have to be, take that responsibility because a lot of times you'll see those who are maybe meek and mild. A lot of times those people tend to have a high percentage of their boundaries blurred or shade or pushed back. And so it's important that you're able to say that's a no for me or I'm uncomfortable and set those boundaries in place.
So that brings me to an interesting question based on what you just said. You said for people who are meek and mild, those people are more likely to have, or it is more common for those people to have their boundaries crossed or compromised. But I find that even strong people sometimes have their boundaries compromised. And the reason that that is because sometimes people haven't even sat down and established what the boundary is for themselves.
Absolutely. So I take myself as being very assertive or a strong personality, as my kids may say,
Okay.
or maybe my, coworkers may say. However, we have like I said, we have 5 kids, and at any given time, it was 7 of us in this household. And please understand, boundaries all got shaded or blurred or pushed at some point. And so even me being what I would consider a strong personality or very assertive, my lines got pushed as a parent, as a mom. And it wasn't just because of that. It's just in certain situations that were tender to my heart. I tend not to be as assertive, or my line was not drawn as it probably should have been.
Yes. And I want us to get into that. We'll put a pin in it for now. But I want us to get into that, how easy it is for us to compromise the boundaries that we've set. Because, like you said, people think, and especially people who are a little bit more timid or people who are a little bit milder in personality, people who are more passive than assertive, they think people like us or people who have, big personalities or people who don't have a problem being assertive, that
Mm-hmm.
their boundaries are hardly ever compromised. But
Mm-hmm.
the truth is, there are occasions when even assertive people will find themselves allowing their boundaries to be crossed. Because, like you said, especially when there are things that are near and dear to your heart, certain people can start playing the tiny violin, or your kids can give you that look, or
Mm-hmm.
there's a coworker at work who really knows how to give the puppy dog eyes, and they can have you doing things that you said that you wouldn't do. But we're
Mm-hmm.
going to talk about why it's important to honor your boundaries, because that is a form of self-care, is because of the consequences that come when you allow people to violate or, cross your boundaries. So I want to let me write that down so we can come back to it, because I do
Absolutely.
want
Yes.
to have conversation about that. But like what it looks like when we allow people to compromise those boundaries. So I'm gonna make a little note right there.
Absolutely. Because I have been in those situations a couple different times in different types of relationships. So not just with children, at work, right? In friendships, you know. And so again, the other part of it is being able to realize what's going on and identifying a plan to address what's going on. And the biggest thing is being able to figure out, how do I want to handle this? What is the outcome? What is the desired outcome? Right. And then at that point, you can determine what's the best way to handle it. But I have been in that situation several times where my boundaries were compromised.
Good. Okay. So we're going to keep going with that. I want you to talk about how you balance and how you set boundaries. So do you think you're good at it? And if so, or are you a work in progress? And how have you gone about setting boundaries? And how are you doing with keeping them?
So that's interesting because I think I like to say I'm doing good, but it depends on who you ask. And when I say that is, it depends on the relationship. So, leave it up to my siblings, my sister, my brother. They would say, absolutely. I'm the youngest of the two. And they always laugh at me because they say, I think like I think I act as if I'm older than them. But the biggest part is I learned from their experiences or the lessons. So it's not that, but I'm very assertive and I try to be very forthcoming. And so what I do, or what I like to do as far as my children, is set those examples by communicating clearly. Like, hey, I don't like that. And then also give them a reason. And then once I give them a reason, I then like to follow behind what's the repercussions, like, what's going to follow after that. So if you do cross my boundaries, this will happen. So being very clear on what the issue is, why I don't like it, and then what's going to happen if you continue. I think that will give them a fair opportunity to be great. And then also it gives me an opportunity to protect my peace. And so right now, my biggest thing, that's our motto in our house right now. Protect your peace. Protect your peace. And if someone is kind of pushing those boundaries, being able to speak up. Like my oldest daughter right now, she's okay. You have girls. I have 3 girls and 2 boys. And so she's the oldest. And of course, all the things that she has, her goodies, her makeup, hair products, my youngest one loved to come and get. She loved to just come get it. And so my oldest daughter is like, look, I don't mind if you get my items, but you must ask. If you don't ask, then you can't use them. When I hear that, I try not to interrupt that moment between them because that's a boundary she set. Right. And I'm glad that she learned that because I was like, okay, this is how it's going to be in the household. We need to speak our mind, but we don't need to be aggressive with it. So something I try to do in addition to that is give options. Like, hey, I don't like this, but you can do that. So those are some things that we're doing in the household is making sure that we communicate how we feel and why, because it's always lessons learned, right? And then at the same time, possibly give options like, hey, I don't like this, but you can do this.
So you are a mother of 5.
Yes.
Okay. So I know that there have been some times when
I had to pray.
May not have had the boundaries that you needed in order to protect your peace. So tell me about how you got to this place where you are now, where you have boundaries and you're teaching your kids about how to set expectations about how people are going to engage with them and treat them and what they're going to allow as far as how they interact with people. So what was your path that led you to this place where you have these firm boundaries set? Because unless you were always like this, but what was your path to getting here with 5 kids?
So with my kids, I try to teach them, number one, be mindful, right? Be mindful for others and also just be mindful of yourself. You have to be able to communicate, even if you have to talk to yourself. Think about what you like, what you don't like. Be mindful of other people in their space. In addition to that, have grace. Not everybody know, and like we said earlier, not everybody know your level of what's acceptable, right? So have grace for those who may not know. And then also, whatever means of communication you feel is appropriate, that's going to be effective, use that means to communicate that. So you don't have to come in, and fussing at them, don't get my stuff, nothing like that. But you can use that positive communication. Hey, I don't like when you just use my stuff without asking. Be assertive, because let that person know that's a hard no. So I try to teach my kids, no, make sure you just humble yourself down. Just calm down, be mindful, have that grace, and then positive communication. Sometimes it doesn't go that easy, and a lot of times it don't. Everything, like I said, everything is a lesson. So if you continue to enforce that, then at some point that person will catch on, or at some point you're gonna have to say no in general, and that's it.
But do you feel like you've always been like this?
I don't think I've always been like this. I think in certain areas, based on experiences when I was young or when I was a teenager and in my 20s, I created opportunities to set boundaries in what I knew, because I was very immature at that age, right? So it's certain things I knew that was a no. You, of course, I don't want, no talking back, some of the basic things. However, setting boundaries more and more as I gotten older, as my kids got older, I realized that, you know what, this is going to be helpful for me. And this is going to also be helpful for them. Because what I found out, and I think Mel Robbins said it in one of her podcasts, that if you allow your children to continue to pass your boundaries, you're not giving them an opportunity to be great. If you continue to allow them to not solve problems, if you solving problems for them and you're fixing things for them, that boundary is getting muddy, because now as they get older, they're going to always expect somebody to do that for them. They're going to always expect somebody to handle their problems. So you're cheating them out of being great. So that's one thing I had to realize. And this is probably sooner like now than I did back then, that I'm not allowing them to be great. Me allowing my boundaries to get faded or blurred, I'm setting them up for failure. So it wasn't just protecting my peace. It was also to help them too.
Yeah. So for me, I would say I'm definitely like on the continuum of boundary setting. I am definitely like somewhere in the middle, maybe on the other side of the middle, progressing towards having sound, firm boundaries, but I have not always been that way. And for me, one of the places where I really, really stunk at setting boundaries was at work. I was always one of those people, you have that strong Black woman mentality. You got your cape on at work. I've always been like very goal oriented, very driven. And, like when I'm at work, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to kill it. I want to be the best, but I did not have sound boundaries because I was staying late. I was taking on jobs that other people should have been doing because I got it. Can't nobody do it like me anyway. Nobody's going to do it as good as me anyway. Or, trying to prove to people that I'm deserving, I'm worthy, I'm smart, and, all this and that. And so my boundaries were compromised a lot at work because I was allowing myself to be, I wouldn't necessarily say abused, but misused is a better term, right? So I had to learn, just like if my boss is going home before me, that's a problem. The person that runs the school should be the last person to leave, But here I am, me still working, still grinding, because I didn't have firm boundaries about having a work-life balance. And so I was always compromising. Oh, I could just go home. I'll go home at 5:30 today, or it'll only just be a couple of days this week where I will take work home and stuff like that. So I didn't have boundary put in place where I had that clear, okay, work cuts off here, and then I switch and I'm in mom mode, or I'm in wife mode, or even if I'm just in me mode and having time for myself. And so I had to learn how to create and establish a boundary for myself that I had to have a firm no. Are you staying late today? No. Are you going to be able to have this done by tomorrow? No. That's an unrealistic deadline. I'm not going to be able to have it done I can have it done the next day, but in order for me to have it done tomorrow I'm going to have to take it home and work on it some at home. So no, I cannot do that because I have a husband and kids at home. And so that was something that was an area of for me, of weakness when it came to setting boundaries. So for you, what have you found in the past that is a particular area for you where you feel like it's a weak spot for you to maintain a boundary?
Oh, you said so much. So let me tell you, if you don't mind, when I first started out my career, I don't even think I knew the definition of a boundary. But I also, again, was immature. So I don't think I even knew the definition of hardworking either. Right. So I felt like I was at the bottom. And when I felt that I was at the bottom, I felt like I still had to overachieve and let my boundaries loose as a substitute of, because I felt like I was new. I was in an area where I was I was in a career field. In that area, I was the only young Black female. I'm not in the office though, but in that area. And so with that being said, I felt like I had to wash away my boundaries because I didn't know. And that was okay. And that was not okay. I got so sick. I lost weight. I was stressful. I couldn't be there for my kids. I couldn't be there at the time, my fiance. And I was the worst version of me. And I didn't know what happened because I felt like, wait, I just got this job. I got this great opportunity. And this is horrible. I just got out of college and I got, salary job. That was the biggest thing with the government. And so I was like, all this great things are happening, but I feel the worst. And so what I found out was as I continued to progress and I had to lean on my village, had to lean on my mentors, and they told me that, hey, guess what? There's a ground and you can put your foot down, right? You don't have to accept it, even if you are just coming in, even if you are the newbie, you don't have to accept all of that. You can put your foot down and be okay. And when I realized, and as I built confidence, right? And that's what a lot of people understand, being able to have the confidence to say no, to say, I feel some kind of way. And once I realized that I had a voice and that I had a foot and there's a ground, at that moment, I was like, I will never do that again. I will never put myself in a situation like that again. And the interesting part is as I started, getting new jobs, going different places and having different supervisors, it took my latest supervisor, not now, but my latest supervisor, the Black female. I felt like she took me down a notch again because I was like, I told myself I would never do this again. Why am I back feeling this way? Because she was equally a strong Black female.
Yeah.
And like you said, that type of personality, it took me back down. So I was like, whoa, wait. And I had to have a self-talk. Hey, self, Jada, you said you was not accept this again. What's going on? You have to be there for your family there, So I had to stop and I came up with a plan, had to be mindful. I was humbled. I communicated with I was very assertive and I had to go talk to her. Let me tell you, you made me feel this kind of way. I don't like when you put me in this situation, but let me help you. And it's going to help me also. This is how you can move forward. And so that's why I tell my employees too, if you have a problem with something and you need a boundary set, don't just come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution also. Because at that point, I know that you've put some thought into it. I know that, hey, this, what level you are, where you at with this. And I know that, what, he came with a solution or she came with a solution and I'm going to consider it because I respect that person. They put that boundary in place. And that has happened. My employees had to come to me and say, hey, look, Jada, I'm not feeling this. And I had to say, oh, I was boundary. That person put a boundary. And I was like, I respect that 100%. And it came with a solution. I love it. And so in that situation at work, I had to figure things out quickly, right? And when I realized that, hey, I have to make sure that myself is good, especially when it comes to my kids. I have to make sure that I am great for myself because I can be good for you. And I don't want to give you what's left of me. I would rather give you the best of me.
Yes,
Right?
yes, yes. And I think that was one of the things for me too, because if you go to work all day and you're working one and a half of another person's load of work, then you're bringing work home, and then you're trying to do all the mom things and all the wife things, you're burnt out. And so
Yeah.
that's only going to last so long before you are just depleted.
Depression.
And then when you are coming from a place of depletion, then that's going to affect how you interact. You know, you might be short with your kids. You might be snappy because you're tired or because you're frustrated, or you're too tired at the end of the night to even, you know, sit down and watch a movie with your husband or something like that. So it is very important to understand those consequences that come with not setting boundaries. I wrote a couple things down as you were talking. So I wrote down compromise boundaries because we think we aren't enough. And so I think that that is one of the main reasons why people allow their boundaries to be compromised. Or like you said, that line to become shaded because you think
Yes.
you aren't enough, or you think you're not deserving of
Yeah.
people honoring your boundaries. Like you
And I
said,
think,
you were young and you were
yeah.
working and you're thinking, hey, I'm at the bottom of the band.
Uh-huh.
I'm supposed to be misused and abused, and
Right.
people tell me what to
Right.
do and pile all the work on me.
Yes.
No. And then, you know, and that can look other ways. Like people might be in a relationship and they're not in a solid relationship and they don't feel secure in a relationship. And so they allow their partner to constantly compromise their boundaries. Eating, just not keeping your word. You said you were going to do this and you didn't do it. And you allow that person to continuously be inconsistent and cross your boundary of being consistent and keeping your word because you think that the relationship is not secure and it could crumble and fall apart at any time.
And
So,
Kim, let me tell you, it goes the same as children too. And that's what happened I feel happened to me. I can't say it happened to my husband, but I can definitely say it happened to me. You know, like I said, we had 5 kids in the household at any given time, which means I can't be there for all of them at the same time, all the time. And sometimes, because of the age difference, sometimes they went through those teenage years at different times, right? And sometimes that different ones needed attention more than the others. And I felt like that's when my boundaries kind of in the household got shaded because it was like I felt guilty because
mom guilt.
I didn't give, you know, child 5, 4, and 3 enough attention because 1 or 2 got my attention, you know. And so that's when that feeling, that subconscious feeling come on upon me. And I feel like now I gotta go and allow them to blur because I didn't, you know, and like you're saying, you're compromising.
Yep. Shame is probably one of the most fiendish emotions that you can have. Shame leads to so many other things that it's amazing. I read Brene Brown and I've like kind of taken the time to really like read her stuff, and she does a lot of shame work. And so I've been digging into like my shame. And when you start thinking about like the core of what motivates you to have made certain moves in your lives, and when you're able to track it back to shame, you're like, well, me. And it's crazy. So when you get to the root of it and start addressing those emotions and letting go of the shame that you have, or that inferiority, or that lack of confidence that you have, it's so freeing. And it allows you to do things like you said, set that boundary. Like, oh, that mom guilt. I did the best I could with the resources, information, and energy that I had. And it might
Absolutely.
not have been perfect, but it was the best that I have. So I give myself grace to say I did the best that I have. And no, I'm not going to let you do that. No, you're going to talk to me like that. No, you can't do this.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have to do that. And then the other thing I wrote down is trying to prove yourself. That was something that we both said as well, which kind of goes back to that we don't think we're enough. We try to prove ourselves to people. We try to prove ourselves in certain spaces with certain people. We try to prove ourselves in relationships. We're trying to prove that we're such a good mom. And a lot of times, sometimes we're even trying to prove we're such a good friend, and we allow our boundaries to be violated. Like, for example, you try to prove that you're such a good friend. You're a ride or die friend. I hate that term ride or die, by the way, but I'll share that another day.
You have to explain to me
why are we riding and dying?
Well, we got to ride and die. Why can't we just ride?
Hey, but like you have a friend and maybe your friend is cheating on their spouse. And so they're like, girl, I'm going to need you to lie for me, girl. I'm going to say that me and you went such and such. And so if my husband called looking for me, tell your husband to tell him we went such and such, that could be crossing a boundary for you. Because if you have decided that you're not going to lie to your spouse, right? Or that you just don't want to lie in general, that you don't want to be a part of destroying or breaking up a marriage, but you're trying to prove your loyalty to your friend, or you're trying to prove that you're a good friend. And so you go on with that charade, but that's crossing a boundary for you. And so just like you're trying to be a good friend to that friend also should be trying to be a good friend to you. And you say, like you said, hey, this makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't want to engage in destroying a marriage. I'm not going to lie to my husband for you, or my partner for you.
Right.
And I don't feel comfortable even lying to your partner for you. And so if you're a good friend to me, then I need you to respect my boundary. And so, like, it's that trying to prove ourselves to people. Sometimes we want to prove something to people so badly
we set ourselves
that we will compromise who we are, our values, our beliefs, our ideals.
Exactly.
And it's just that simple. And like I said, sometimes we don't even think about it. We don't think about those simple little everyday things that we do that might be compromising to us.
Try to teach. I really do try to teach my children that, hey, you don't have to prove anything to anyone, right? And it's okay to set your boundaries. And in fact, it's interesting because when you set your boundaries, you may have a moment of guilt because you feel like your loyalty to that person supersedes how you believe, or your morale, or how you believe. However, the biggest thing is, when you set your boundaries, if that was your friend, they will respect you. Same thing is in the household. With my spouse, for example, we try to communicate. We try to use a method of communicating prior to how we feel about situations. And we don't do it in the middle of a disagreement. We always try to use like extremely happy moments, right? To communicate that, hey, I don't like when you do this. I don't like this, makes me feel this way. And making sure that person understands you, and so that helps when those moments come about. And you're like, hey, remember we had that conversation? Oh, okay. And that we can go back to something. We can relate it back to something. So, and it's interesting. You said compromising, and I thought about it as women, and not just women, Black women. We have been known to have this overachiever, aggressive personality that we're having to feel like we have to be the best person in the room. And therefore, we can compromise our boundaries. We can compromise how we feel. We can compromise our values and beliefs so that we can always be up here. And in actuality, it's the opposite. You don't need to compromise your boundaries or your values or your beliefs. If you set your boundaries up here on what you expect at the beginning, then you already win. You already win.
That's a good point. Yeah. Sometimes in the chasing of the thing and trying to,
Exhausting.
Grind and hustle, it can cause you to, compromise yourself.
Yeah, it's exhausting trying to. I mean, you still can do it, but it's just that much more exhausting. And so if you try to do it at the beginning and right when it happened, or, give yourself some time to think like, wait, did that just happen? Let me think about this. Let me process. And it's okay to have a processing period, but you also need to go ahead and address it, because at that point, that person will, from here on out, respect your boundaries that you communicate about.
Yeah. What you said brought up for me that this is like a little revelation. I think I knew it, but just saying it. Sometimes people will violate our boundaries, but sometimes we will violate our own boundaries.
Yes.
Sometimes we will, sometimes somebody might do something and you're like, whoa, you're tripping, but are we paying attention to those times when we cross our own boundaries? Like we've put a standard in place and then we ourselves cross it. Like I said, I wasn't going to do that anymore. I said the next time he called me, I was not going to answer. He's not coming over here anymore. And then he calls and you're like, you can come over this one more time. And then, it's like every time it's the one more time, right?
And then you're feeling bad afterwards.
But like when somebody crosses our boundaries, we like, hey.
We ready.
Hey, bub, you crossed the boundary.
We hold everybody else up here but our own self. That's a problem.
Right. But when you cross your own boundary, are you like, hey, girl.
Here you go, giving yourself grace.
Grace. Yes. A lot of grace. Grace on grace on grace.
And that's the moment you need to be ready. You need to be ready. It's okay to have high standards.
Yes.
Hey, keep it high. Wave morale. Let people know, like, hey, this is what I expect. Keep those boundaries, even for yourself. Yes. Because it makes you feel good afterwards. It's plenty of times, especially, I would probably say in the grandma mode, it's plenty of times where, my daughter has, needed some help. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm tired. I'm going to say no. But then she'll bring the baby to the door and I'm like, bring her in.
Now you're sleepy at work the next day.
Now I'm sleepy. And now I have created that blurred, I create that blurred line. So all she know now is all I got to do is bring, Milan to the door and she's going to give in. She's going to melt. It happens every time. I love my baby. I love my grandbaby. And every time she bring her to my door, I'm like, okay. And so now, I have set that standard.
Yep, you reinforce the behavior.
Right. And then I feel bad, guilty, shame, where if I say no. I'm like, oh, you know what? She needed a little help. She needed a little bit of time. Go ahead and bring me the baby. And so, but that's my grandbaby. So, that line is going to probably always stay blurred.
That's just that's one of those ones that's going to be in progress. You're going to just be constantly working on.
In progress.
Forever.
Damn.
Safeguards for sanity. Boundaries are safeguards for our sanity. And that's why they're so important. You're not just walking around telling people, no, I'm putting my foot down here. No, just being mean. They're safeguards for our sanity. We need to have boundaries in place. Boundaries that we have set for ourselves. Boundaries, again, about how we're going to interact and engage with other people, because they're safeguards. They're like guardrails that keep us, from going off the rails and ending up, in God knows what kind of situation, right?
Exactly.
So I want to, no, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I was going to say with the safeguards, it's so important when it comes to sanity, because when you think about, the definition of insane, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different outcome. And that's what we keep saying. I'm going to say no. This time it's going to work. I'm going to say no. This time it's going to work. And then you start saying, okay, who's the insane one? Because again, you're responsible, right? So am I the one who needs to reevaluate and reinforce those boundaries, that line? And the other part of it, it's balance. You have to be able to balance it, right? There's a balance to boundaries too. And so it's going to be your responsibility to be able to engage in what's acceptable and what's the balance.
So I wanted to talk about, because you mentioned this twice, so I want to dig into it a little bit. That guilt that comes when you have to set a boundary. Let's talk about that. We got mom guilt, we got grandma guilt. I mean, it's all kinds of guilt. So let's talk a little bit about the guilt that comes with having to say no or having to, enforce a boundary, and then just how we work through that guilt.
You know what? My first thing now is I just pray. That's the first thing I do. And the second thing I do, and I'm so serious because I have to calm myself down when it comes to that guilt. It puts me into a sympathetic stress response mode, right? Where I start doing irrational things because I feel guilty. I'm not doing things in a rational way. And so when I say no, then I start to think about how can I say no a little bit? Can I say no account? And I start tilting, right? Like, and so everything from the beginning of when I said no is out the door. So I had to learn to, pray first, calm myself down, especially now that I'm in, a life coach. And I tell my clients to calm yourself down, parasympathetic mode, calm yourself down, calm your nervous system down, breathe in, do your breathing exercises, right? And then talk to yourself. A lot of people don't understand talking to yourself. You're not crazy.
Self-talk is a real
You're
thing.
not crazy at all. You keeping yourself sane. Look, I tell my kids, you want me to talk to myself right now because what I'm saying right now probably won't sound good coming out. So talk to yourself and keep yourself calm. And as you work your way through it, because guilt is it's natural. It's a natural emotion. Expect that it's going to happen. And so when you know it's going to happen, go ahead and talk yourself through it and say, look, I might feel guilty about this. When it's happened, you do it before and you got to do it after. I might feel guilty, but I know this is for the good. I know this is going to help the other person, whether it's kids or it's employees or if it's my siblings, whatever. I know this is going to be helpful for them. So I'm going to go ahead and put it out there and I'm going to put it in God's hands and I'm going to pray about it. And then I'm going to release myself from it. And sometimes when you release yourself from it and allow it to work through all the different phases, allow that person to work through all of that, at the end, you're happy. That person know where they stand. They know where you stand. And you guys will respect each other much more than you did before it. So guilty is going to happen. You just have to know that, look, I'm going to feel this way. It's not, we shouldn't be shocked that, if I say no, why am I saying no? Oh my God, I feel bad. No, you're going to feel some kind of level and it's okay. But you have to talk yourself through it and work and give yourself give yourself phases. I like to tell my clients, you have option menus, you have menus for everything. And it's okay because tell yourself that, look, this is what you're going to go through. You can pick either to meditate, you can do breathing exercises. And so as you work yourself through your phases, then you can calm yourself down. You can relate to what's going on and you can release it.
Yes. Love that. Love that. Compensating for saying no by doing things to ease the blow. It rhymed a little bit.
Yes.
Compensating for saying no by doing things to ease the blow. So, like you said, when you feel guilty and then you start trying to compensate for having a boundary, well, you might as well have just let them cross the boundary. If you're going to go,
right.
You tell them, no, I'm not going to let you talk to me. I'm not going to let you disrespect me. I'm not going to let you talk to me crazy. But then you run up behind them all day. Hey, how you doing? Everything okay? You want me to buy you some lunch today? Like you're overcompensating. Then
I'm guilty of that.
You might as well just let them violate the boundary because now you're putting yourself through all these changes.
Yeah. And that person is probably up there smiling and laughing at you and you still stressed out.
Yes. We
and
laugh because we've all done it. You're not the only
one. And it's going to happen again. Guess what? They're going to think like, oh, let me do this again. And here you go running behind doing the same thing over and over. And you might as well, look, set yourself free, set that person up for success and say no, put that boundary up or it is not just no, but just say, look, this is a hard line for me and release it. Let it
I
stay
love
there.
that.
Let it melt a little bit.
Set yourself free.
Set yourself
Set
free
yourself free.
and release.
I also appreciate that you said the thing about when you're starting to set boundaries and you're concerned about that guilty feeling, go ahead and prepare yourself for those feeling
Yes.
of guilt by giving yourself an options menu. Like, okay, I know such and such is going to ask me to watch the kids and I'm
Mm-hmm.
stressed out. I had a hard week at work and I just cannot do it this weekend. I'm sorry. So I know that she's going to be upset. So let me go ahead and prepare myself for how I'm going to work through my guilt and all those
Mm-hmm.
other emotions that might arise by me saying, no, I can't, because I have to honor myself and take care of myself because
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of stressful things happen to me as well. So just like you need some time, I need some time too.
Yes.
So maybe I can workshop with you and help you figure out a way to, get some time for yourself. Like maybe I can make some suggestions of some independent activities that the kids can do.
Yes.
Maybe I can help you find a babysitter, but just preparing yourself, like being proactive and preparing myself. I know I'm going to feel guilty because I'm about to enforce my boundary with this person. So let me go ahead and prepare myself how I'm going to deal with those emotions. That is very wise advice. That's good. That's good stuff. Thank you. And I wrote down, you going to feel guilty or you going to feel shame. So you can feel guilty by saying no, or you're going to be ashamed because you let yourself be compromised. So,
Over and over again.
it's like
Over and over
pick your
again.
poison, pick your poison. At least with the guilt, like you said, you can release it. You can let that guilt go. And ultimately, you
Yes.
will learn to be proud of yourself and feel good about yourself because you stood up for
Exactly.
yourself. You put yourself
Exactly.
first.
Exactly. And
So,
it's interesting that you said that because at some point, some people, that boundary line eventually goes up. So at some point, you may get to a point where you say no. So you got to act, you have to think, do I want to go ahead and say no now or say no later? And if I say no later, then I'm sitting on that much shame over and over, and it's building, Shame on me. Shame on
and
me.
then think about what that shame is doing to you in the meantime. Every time you let that guy come to your house and you're piling up all of that shame, not to mention all the other emotions that you're unearthing as you're trying to let go of him and hold on to him at the exact same time, and all that shame that you're piling on yourself. Man, I know he was here last night, but he was with such and such the night before. And I know I shouldn't be letting him come over here. And I know if I tell my friends, they're going to say something like, all that shame that you're building, you're just adding it on layer after layer after layer, along with the other emotions. And just
And
think
so then
about it. You can just say no.
it becomes your problem, not theirs. Then you're the problem because you're allowing that to happen. And they just doing what they normally do, what they're going to normally do.
You let me
You know,
cross it, I'm going to cross it.
yeah, yeah.
I think we've all met those people before who they don't have a boundary. They don't even know how to spell boundaries. They never heard of the word. Everybody is always compromising them. Like we've all seen those people before.
Yes,
And I would say shamefully, I probably have taken advantage of a person like that before,
yes, yes,
in times
absolutely.
when I'm not being compassionate and gracious. We all know the person who, they're like, well, they're overwhelmed already, but they're like, I can take a little bit of your work. And you're like, oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
you volunteer. Here you go, girl. When you know good and well that they're stressed out, they're
Right.
overwhelmed. Yes, you were stressed out and overwhelmed too, but there are people who
Mm-hmm.
don't have boundaries, and people will prey on those people and take
They
advantage.
will. They
Yeah.
will,
And that's why it's
unfortunately.
so important that you got to
Yeah.
have them. You got to have them because the wolves, they're like, oh, you don't have any morals, values, boundaries? You going to let me just run amok in your
I
life?
can just pounce on you all the time and it's okay.
Hey, say less. Here I come. We laugh, but y'all,
It
it
happens.
is,
It
it
happens.
happens. And it's serious. It's a serious
Yeah, in some
thing.
situations, it is very serious and it's very scary because what happens is that person will continue to use and they will continue to abuse. And what happens is that it gets worse and the situation sometimes is detrimental, unfortunately. And then sometimes that person never have confidence to speak up for themselves or never have the confidence. And that goes back to, do you just making sure that you realize that you are more than enough. You know, you're more than enough. You have the confidence to be able to say, I got this. Goodbye.
And also, we have to acknowledge that, yes, some of our boundaries are not, some of our boundaries were created maybe from, not from the healthiest place or space. So let's acknowledge that we do create boundaries out of hurt, out of
Mm-hmm.
shame, out of anger. So sometimes we do create boundaries that
Mm-hmm.
maybe aren't great boundaries. For example, for me, and it's one of my points of growth that I'm working on. For me, I have a boundary where you crossed me one time and you are out of my life forever. It's like I never knew you. You
You
just,
don't have no grace, Kim.
you disappear into thin air. That's the old me. The old me did that
Okay.
kind of stuff. The new me is working
Okay.
on being much more gracious, trying to extend the grace that God extends to me on a daily basis, second by second. And
But to
so
what
that was
extent though?
correct.
Right.
That was a boundary that I established out of hurt. People hurt
Mm.
me. People who I thought were friends, who I thought loved me, who I
Right.
thought would support me, who I thought that I could reveal my truest self to. They violated those things. And so I
Mm.
created a boundary, but it was a boundary that was not created from a healthy place. And so sometimes we also have to do the work of examining our boundaries and making sure that these are boundaries that promote our health and our wellness, our sanity, that they're from a place of self-love and self-care and not from a toxic place. Because sometimes we'll say, because I have a boundary when it comes to that. But your boundary is selfish or your boundary is self-serving. Your boundary is it's
Yeah.
mean. It's not. And so let us be clear
Right.
that sometimes people will have boundaries, but these are not boundaries that were established from a healthy place. Sometimes people are going to have boundaries. And I think if you do a little self examination, you will see that even you have some boundaries that you created maybe from your brokenness. And so you need
Absolutely.
to revisit those boundaries and
Exactly.
realize why you have them set. For me, I acknowledge that that is a weakness for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so while I have those boundaries in place, because nobody's going to play in my face,
Right.
but I do understand that there has to be grace, that people are not perfect, that people are going to make mistakes. We're all humans. Sometimes we don't show up as our best selves. And so sometimes someone may hurt me and it may
Mm-hmm.
truly be unintentional. And so I can't have that boundary in place that anytime somebody hurts me,
Right.
you're done forever and ever. And so
Right.
just wanted to point that out that that is a thing. So,
Well, I'm the same way. I think my boundary come up more early on in the relationship of meeting any new friend. I tend to and like you said, from the past, I tend to keep a guard up. So if I don't let you pass this point of me, then you can't hurt me. So I don't give people the opportunity. It is a boundary. That is a boundary. Like I'm only allowing you to get this part of me, and I'm not going to be vulnerable in any kind of way because you might hurt. But that's not fair, right? That might not be fair to someone who may be a true friend, who may be, that might be a person who God sent to help me out, right? But I'm keeping them only yay far. And so I think that boundary line it has allowed me in some situations or good situations to say, oh, see, goodbye, see you later. I knew you wasn't good. But then in some situations, it's like, ooh, maybe I could have been there a little bit more. And I kept that person, right here. And even some of my friends that I've had from childhood, they've even said, you always listening to us. and we never get to hear you. You never talk about anything. And I'm like, because I keep my business to myself.
Right.
But, but sometimes, being able to be vulnerable and letting them know, like, this is what I'm going through. You may need to talk to someone. It's okay to say, hey, this is what I'm going through, what's going on, and have that person talk back to you. It's okay to release that information. But I have tend to be a little bit closed-minded on that. And so I'm working on that.
Me
I'm
too.
working
Look at
on
us
it.
working. Look at us
Get us
growing.
working.
So, something else I want to talk about, boundaries changing. So even sometimes, so we talked about how you can have a boundary, and sometimes your boundary may not be a healthy boundary, but sometimes even your healthy boundaries will evolve or change. So let's talk about when there are instances when maybe it's time to consider a boundary evolving or changing.
So for me, of course, as you mature, eventually your confidence level in what you have going on, it evolves, right? And so with that being said, you're really able to define your boundaries more as you go through things. And so I think for me, when it came to, for example, my workplace, being able to look at over. So originally when I was working, I was looking at working like, okay, I got to work hard, kind of like you did. I got to work hard. I got to be this overachiever. I got to be better than everyone else. Because in my mind, I thought my performance mean that I'm an overachiever. That means I'm going, if I'm going to apply for the next job in that same company or agency, then I'm going to be considered at the top. And I've even coached before on that. But then I had to go back and think about it. Like, wait, that's a form of being used. And so wait, I need to rethink my thought process on that. I'm not going to be used, but I am going to still be a high achiever. I'm still going to have quality work. And so being able to balance that out, again, is your responsibility. And you have to make sure that it's within means of what you have going on. So it's not a one for all answer and say, hey, I'm just going to always be here, or I'm going to always be an overachiever. What does that mean? What does that mean to be an overachiever, but then not be used? So you have to determine, again, I go back to, you have to determine the levels, and you have to say, okay, this is acceptable level. I'm going to operate right here. And I like doing this. This makes me feel good. I feel comfortable. You have to do a temperature check, right? So you always want to check in with yourself. Like, how do I feel? Let me engage. Am I okay with this? Do I feel like I'm doing too much? Do I feel like my boundary lines are being blurred out or not being respected? Am I not being respected? So you have to constantly engage in with yourself on what's going on. And at that point, you can determine, okay, now I need to, put some more boundaries up, or I need to change a little bit, or I need to adjust my boundary line because I feel like, it's not the outcome I'm desiring, or that, what, maybe my boundary line is a little bit too stringent. I need to relax just a smidgen so that I can get the information or resources I need.
Think about it like training wheels. So there's a time in your life you need training wheels. But once you become really good at riding the bike, the training wheels can become a hindrance, right? Like when you get real good, you can only go so fast with the training wheel. You can't really hit those corners good with the training wheel. So as long as your boundary is serving you in a healthy way, it's probably a good boundary. But if it no longer serves you or it is no longer beneficial, then it may be time to change it. So just like you get to a point where you take your training wheels off because you don't need them anymore, sometimes you may not need the boundary anymore, or maybe you don't need it in the same way anymore. So let's say you're a person who like you struggle with saying no. And so if people even lean on you just a little bit, you're going to crumble and you're going to say yes. So initially, you might have a boundary in place where I said what I said. No is no. You don't want to engage in discussion, conversation. You don't want them to give you any reasons or anything, because for your well-being, you can't. Because if they say, well, you're like, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So, that might be how you start out, but you might grow and learn to become a little bit more assertive, as you said. And you may get to a place where you don't have to just be, no, I said what I said. It's a no, no discussion. I don't want to
Right.
talk about it. You could get to a place where you're able to have conversation with people. And through your conversation, then you are better able to determine if it is a no or if it is something that you're willing to allow or give access to. We need to always be in that place and space where we are reevaluating our
Mm-hmm.
boundaries and just looking at, okay, does this boundary still serve me in the
Mm-hmm.
best way possible? Like I said, with my unhealthy boundary about cutting people off immediately, that boundary no longer served me.
Right.
And because I wanted to have quality relationships with people, which meant that I had to give them a chance because they weren't going to be perfect and they were going to mess up. And so I had to, it served me for a time in my life when I was wounded and hurt and I couldn't take another blow. I wasn't in a place mentally where I could take another letdown. And so for that moment in time, even though it was unhealthy, it did kind of serve me, right? But
Yeah.
when I got to a place where I wanted to evolve and it was no longer serving me, I had to make adjustments. And that's kind of a negative way, but even sometimes positive boundaries, like boundaries that you have with your kid. A boundary that I am currently working on is because y'all, it's a
So I'm looking
struggle.
like, what
And let's see if
you
you can
working on?
identify. So I have my oldest daughter is 27 years old. We are transitioning from that mom daughter to mom daughter who's also friend ish type of situation. And so for me, I had a hard, like, I was one of those mamas when I say, I'm not your little friend, I'm not your little friend. Don't play with me.
Yeah.
And, even I had my daughter when I was very young. I had my daughter when I was 16 years old. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but we never had that kind of relationship. I was always her mama. We were not friends. We're not besties. You can't call me and kiki and tell me about this, that, and the third. No, ma'am. I'm your mom. I'm your
Right.
mom. For real, for
Right.
real. But now that she's older, we're in that place where we're finding our way through this mom plus friend. And so for me, that has been a little bit of a challenge. Little bit. Little, nothing little. I mean,
Yeah.
because I had those boundaries and those boundaries served me well. I feel like me being their mom, um, and not getting into those murky, muddy waters where I'm playing friend with them sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It served us well. I think we have three really great kids. She is a phenomenal young woman. I can't say enough great things about her. But now she's a woman. She is a whole
Her
woman.
own woman. She's her
Oh,
own woman.
woman. And so now relationship is evolving into something different. So the same boundaries that I had don't serve our relationship anymore. And
Mm.
so I'm doing my darn.
Hey, look,
I'm trying. I love you, girl.
you the home girl.
Never
You the new
I
home
don't
girl.
ever want to be her home girl, but I
That
do want to
exactly.
be her girl, but I don't know if I want to get to the home.
You girl. Not your home girl.
Yeah, I feel like homegirl probably step I would, and there's some mamas, hey, more power to you, but I don't think I ever get to homegirl level. But I do want to be her friend. I want to be her mom, but and I am her mom, but I want to be her friend.
Now that
And
you are at
so
this point.
I'm just working on making sure that her boundaries and my boundaries both are able to facilitate that. So
Right.
yeah, that's me,
Right.
y'all.
No, that's interesting that you say that because that's when you first was talking. That's the first thing I thought about was the changing boundaries as it relates to as your kids get older. Because I do have, the older kids, and then that are, in their 20s, and then I have two teenagers, and so the first group, I think, we were young and we were, our determination and goals and everything we were, oh my God, it came to parenthood. We were strict and we were, okay, go do this and do that. And, don't look this way, look this way. And now with the teenagers, we're tired. It's like, I'm tired. Okay. And so the kids see the difference, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we try to, go back to making sure that we, that's not too big of a gap as far as how we are parenting. But with the older kids, they're getting to that point where they're testing the waters too to see what they can do at this older age. And you're like, wait a minute, that's a little bit too far. Slow down. Okay, let's take baby steps to this thing. And, like you said, I'm not your homegirl. However, I do respect the friendship that we're trying to create. And I appreciate the openness. And some things I'm like, not there yet. No, we're not there yet. I'm not sure if we'll be
Work
there,
in
but I'm not
progress.
there yet.
Yeah, work in
And the
progress.
thing
For
about it
real.
is, you want to be able to let some of your boundaries down a little bit as they get older, because then their boundaries are starting to come up, right? And again, you want to balance out so that you can maintain that healthy relationship with your children or your young adult children, your adult children. You want to continue to maintain a healthy relationship where you're at this time, your opinions, because they become your opinions now, right? When they get into adulthood, or your advice,
Yeah, because
it's
it
no
used to be
longer
your word was the law. It was
it's
gospel.
not your rules. It's just your opinion and your advice. And you want them to still listen and respect you when you are giving them advice or, giving them your opinion, because they're still going to go through things. And so my mom's opinion and her advice are still valid. Like, I'm like, especially when it comes to parenting, I might go to her for something and I'm like, I understand. You're right. I forgot. Sometimes we forget that we went through things too. And she always like, well, Jada, you did the same thing. And I'm like, you're right. And so, but I value that from her. And so I value her opinions and her advice. And I want my children to do the same thing. And so, it's no longer my rules or my requirements, and it's no longer the law. It's now, this is my opinion. I want you to be considerate of how I feel, because I want you to see the bigger picture. And I'm thinking that how I feel is that my kids see it as that. They see it as, you know what? She loves me. This is coming from a place in her heart. It's not just because she's trying to be hardcore. She really cares about me. And her opinion and advice is because it's coming from a loving place.
Very good. So those boundaries will
Parenting,
change and evolve.
motherhood.
Those boundaries will change and evolve. And that's
Yes.
okay. And that's okay. You just got to do the work and just
And
stick
sometimes
through it.
they
Again,
change where
it's
you
a
have to get,
progression. It's the
yeah, and
progression.
sometimes they change where you have to get, stricter. So for example, my teenagers, I'm like, wait, something's off. We need to tighten up. It's not just loose. They don't just change because they get loose. Sometimes you have to become more stringent. And I'm like, something's off. We need to figure this out. You know.
Been there. I have one of those too. I'm not going to put said person's business out there. All
Oh.
right. So we're getting ready to wrap up, but before we go, let's talk a little bit about why boundaries are so important as it relates to self-care and wellness.
So let me tell you, I have, some clients that I'm working with now, they struggle with boundaries, right? And one thing we're working on is creating tools. And we mentioned it a little bit about having your menus. And so one thing I tell my clients is you're going to create two systems. I want you to create a support system. And these are your family and friends and your social circle, right? And you're going to create an accountability system. And any one of those, everybody has to fit in either system. You have to pick, is this going to be your support system, or is this going to be are they going to be part of your accountability system? And this is done for a reason when it comes to boundaries. Okay. So your support system is like even if I'm having a bad hair day, they're still going to tell you, girl, you look good. It doesn't matter how you look or what you got. They're going to support you no matter what's going on. Right. Your accountability system, that's the individual. That's your hardcore. They're like, nope, tighten up, get together. Right. So it doesn't matter where they are in that system. That's still your social circle. That's your family. That's your friends. You're letting them know that, look, I am going in. When they first start off with the program that I have, you're letting them know that I'm going through a transition and I'm going through some habit changing, right? I'm going to make some adjustments in my life, and I want you to be there for me, whether you're in my support system or my accountability system. And number one, that's for you and your systems, but also as you evolve and make changes, you've already prepared them, right? So they're not looking at you like, what's going on with her? Or what's going on with him? Why he's changing? You've already given them a heads up that this change is coming. And so they're evolving with you, right? They're these habit changing. They're doing this with you. This is your whole system going up together so that you can be great. And so as you define your boundaries, right, that everybody in both your systems, they're right there with you. So you're not just coming out the blue and saying, oh, no, nobody can't cross over this line, because if you didn't have this, if you didn't have your systems in place, they're going to look at you like, whoa, what is going on? She's changing. And not that that matters, but it's just easier if you're going to go through a habit changing transition to have both your systems doing it with you, encouraging you to be there for you. And so I have my clients to do untouched day, right? And so I have a client who sometimes struggle with saying no. We talked about this earlier, saying no to everything. And so when I said, okay, we're going to define an untouched day, whatever day it is. It can be any day of the week. So she picked Thursday. And what happens is that means nobody can touch Thursday. That's your untouched day. So if they need you to go to the store, they need you to do this or that, they already know because you've told both systems, Thursday is my untouched day. I need for you to be there for me on this. I need you to, hold me in my accountability system. I need you to hold me accountable to make sure that this happened. And my support system, come on, encourage me. And so pretty much if you've already put your whole group inside one of those systems, they're going to respect that automatically because they're right there with you. So they already know that when Thursday comes, if I need something, I'm going to have to figure it out because this person, that's her untouched day. So that's one of the first things we do is, creating that boundary so that your systems, both your systems can kind of be there for you, encourage you to put boundaries in place, encourage you to have habit changing for self-care. Now, this is important because you can always use that day, that untouched day for self-care. You can make sure, again, you have your option menus, whether it's meditating, whether it's your breathing exercises, whether it's, I like to call them your services, getting your services done. Your untouched day is your day. And you are going to celebrate in that day at least once a week. And you can celebrate by just whatever type of meal, even if you're in a health and wellness program, you can say, okay, this untouched day, I'm going to have my dessert this day. Like whatever, make that day grand, make it big. And that's your day. So that allows, you're also keeping yourself within your own boundaries. And then you're also putting boundaries up for others.
The fact that if you start off with something small, like an untouched day, or maybe even if it's a half day, because I know a whole day can be a lot for people, but that is like I think that's a really easy way to sort of ease into the concept of boundaries, especially for a person who doesn't have a lot of boundaries. That's an easy way to ease into boundaries because all you're really saying is, let me use this day for myself. And then once you learn how to tell people no or enforce that boundary a couple times, then you can start digging into some more serious matters that you need to establish a boundary for. Because like we said, you have your systems. Yeah, and you have the systems to support you. Like we said, there's safeguards to your sanity. There's safeguards to your well-being. So boundaries are not fences that keep you in. It's not like a prison. They are things that protect you to keep the bad things out.
Exactly.
And as we discussed before, because they can change and evolve, when there are times to move your fence, you move it. But you just don't want to get in the habit to opening the door and letting any old thing in. Oh, the big bad wolf is at the door. Come on in.
At any time.
Right. So if kind of just take the fence down if you're gonna do that. But what it all boils down to is that boundaries are for you. When you have those healthy boundaries put in place, they are for you. They're going to protect you. They might protect you from a actual physical, your health, or, it could be your mental health and wellness. But you want to
Right.
make sure that you're doing that self-reflection and that evaluation as you're establishing your boundaries. And maybe you do need to work with a coach, somebody like Coach Jada, to help you walk through that process of setting up some boundaries. If you feel like that's something that you're not good at, you don't even know where to start, you find yourself constantly compromising yourself and allowing others to violate your boundaries, or you find yourself blurring the lines yourself, or you deal with a lot of guilt and shame because of telling people no and honoring your boundaries, or because you're letting people violate them all the time, you might need
Right.
to work with a coach. If you have some serious, deep-rooted issues and traumas, you might need to start with a therapist and then transition
Exactly.
to a coach, or have both.
Exactly.
But boundaries are a good thing. So if there are people in your life who are constantly they're utilizing boundaries right now in this moment, and sometimes you might have been on the end of that no. It's okay. It's okay. Give them grace and respect their boundary. Even if right now
Exactly.
it may not even be the healthiest boundary. They might just need help and support working through to get get to a place where it's a healthy boundary. But
Yes.
when people tell you, or when people put a boundary in place and you end up being on the end of that no, it's okay. It's
It's
okay.
okay.
Honor that boundary. You don't have to end the
Right.
relationship if it's something that is supporting their safeguarding their sanity, it's honoring them. As I said, it's the ultimate act of self-love. Boundaries are the ultimate act of self-love. If that is what people are doing, that is okay. Stand with them in that space and give them the grace and say, I didn't know. Okay, girl, I respect that. It won't happen again. I didn't know that made you feel that way. And it's so simple. Jada, when you talk to me like that, that hurts my feeling. I don't like the way that makes me feel. Oh, girl, I didn't
Right.
know. That's okay. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It's
Yes.
okay. It's good for all of us. It's good for all of us.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, we have talked and talked and talked because this conversation was so good, and I feel like we could probably go on and
We can
on
keep
and
going.
on for hours and hours. But we are at our close. And so I want to let Coach Jada just let us know how we can find her. If you want to be a client, if you want to follow her on social media or what have you. Coach Jada, tell us where you are on social media, if you have a website, just anything you want to let us know about how we can find you.
So yes, you can find me at coachjadaburrell at gmail.com. I'm creating my website, and so all that is going to come up as far as a website and my social media accounts. So I'm going to send them to you, Kim, so you can link them below and allow people to reach out to me. But if you can email me at coachjadaburrell at gmail.com, I'll be right there for you.
All right, Capeless girls. And of course, my info is here. Don't forget to like this video, give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and most importantly, subscribe and then share it. I'm sure there's somebody in your life who could benefit from this information. All right, Capeless girls, I enjoyed it. It was another good episode. I enjoyed it, and I hope you all did too. So I hope y'all have a great day. Be blessed and set some boundaries. Say no. It's the ultimate act of self-love. Bye.